Ideal mesmo para o mundo atual seria fazer o ensino médio junto com o curso técnico, certo? É no Senac que o aluno tem autonomia de verdade, formação cidadã, foco na diversidade, preparação para o Enem, material didático sem taxas e muito mais. Na real, tem tudo que você precisa para se sentir preparado para a vida. Seja para entrar no mundo do trabalho ou te ajudar a decidir o que fazer na faculdade. Quer saber? Senac. Vem comigo. Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino-médio-técnico.
Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, the 2024 election brought a lot of change, and not just for high-level Republicans. In a handful of states, there were citizen-led initiatives in consideration, too. They're sometimes called ballot questions or voter referendums, and they're how regular people are going around their lawmakers to pass protections for things like legal cannabis, abortion access, and more. They literally give the power to the people. But that option is not on the table here in Pennsylvania, so today we're talking about why. And please hang on till the end. Executive producer Mallory Falk will be on for a conversation sponsored by Alterations Express about their fast and affordable tailoring services. It's Monday, November 11th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. I am here with Mallory to talk about a lingering thought that we have had after last week's election.
Yeah, and if you haven't had a chance yet, please go check out last Wednesday's post-election show that we did, plus Fridays, where we talked to a couple folks who work in progressive politics and advocacy work. They talked a lot about coalition building and what comes next now that conservatism is going to rule for a while, both federally and here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like chief among the concerns that both they shared and I've seen a lot about online is reproductive freedom. So the CityCast Pittsburgh team spent election night all together at producer Sophia Lowe's house. And Mallory, one of the first things you said to me as results were rolling in is, okay, Republicans are winning, but so are a lot of these ballot questions in states that asked voters directly whether they wanted to enshrine access to abortion care in their state constitution as laws, various things.
Yeah, 7 states passed amendments that protect or expand abortion access. Like in Arizona and Missouri, people voted for the right to an abortion up to the point of viability. That's usually around 24 weeks. Missouri was especially interesting because after Roe fell, that state banned nearly all abortions, even in cases of rape and incest. So in a way, this kind of reverses their abortion ban. Mm-hmm. 3 states did reject abortion amendments. One that's gotten a lot of attention is Florida, where the majority of voters, 57%, voted to add abortion rights to the state constitution. But the threshold to actually get it passed was 60%. So even though the majority of voters wanted this, Florida will continue to have a 6-week abortion ban.
At least for now. I've seen a lot of folks already talking about bringing this right back up.
Yeah, exactly. And so 3 voted against, but the majority of states with these sort of questions on the ballot expanded abortion rights.
But I think the important thing is that the voters got to weigh in, right? And that's the rub here in Pennsylvania. We can't do that, not in the same way. And I figured it was probably worth a conversation explaining why.
Right. And if this sounds familiar, it's probably because the team actually talked about this very issue a little while ago when Ohio voters approved 2 ballot measures, one for abortion protections and the other to legalize cannabis. But this continues to be an important and relevant conversation every time people's rights are on the line in an election.
Yeah. I mean, in that case with Ohio, right, like both were added to the state's constitution as amendments, which of course does not mean that they won't face a legal challenge later. That's common. But regardless, what happens here is just so different than Ohio and Missouri and these other states. Here's how friend of the pod, reporter Ed Mahan from Spotlight PA put it.
It's super different and it's super restrictive and it's not accessible to the public in the same way at all.
We're actually going to turn to Ed a bunch throughout this conversation because he had to learn a lot about this as it relates to legalizing recreational cannabis and how a bunch of other states, including Ohio, got it done. But their path won't work for us. And a side note here, you're going to hear Ohio come up a lot in this episode, partly because we think it's useful to look at a state that's further to the right than we are, And partly because, I mean, come on, it's our rival. It should not be doing things better than we are.
So here in Pennsylvania, to get something on the ballot, it's not citizen-led. It happens in the legislature. So you need both the state Senate and the state House to pass the same proposed constitutional amendment. You need them to get along, basically, to talk to each other, to compromise, to function, to make identical proposals in both chambers. And not just once. They have to do it in 2 legislative sessions in a row.
This is wild to me on so many levels. Like, first of all, whenever the chambers are split, you know they're not going to put out the exact same proposals on contentious issues. We are not in a bipartisan era, and the chambers have been split in our state. They will continue to be. We have different parties in control of the House and Senate. So this stuff just seems like an impossibility from the start. And then having to pass this twice in 2 different legislative sessions just seems like a recipe for losing momentum around these issues that like really immediately impact people's lives.
Yeah, when we were talking about this, you said, I think we're not in a bipartisan era, and I think that sums this up really nicely. Also, it does kind of get worse. So again, a quirk of Pennsylvania, our legislative sessions are 2-year cycles. So in theory, both chambers propose and pass identical measures. They wait a year or 2, depending on where in that 2-year cycle they did this, and then they do the same thing again. Now, mind you, there might be an election in the middle of that. The people you're asking to pass it may have changed between the first round of votes and the second, but let's just pretend it's possible that they get it done. Everyone in both chambers agree, or at least a majority, twice. Then and only then does it go to the voters on our ballots in the next election cycle. Also, we should say the governor has 0 say in any of this. Like, they can, of course, throw support behind something, but they cannot make the proposal. They can't schedule a vote. They can't do anything. Here's Ed again.
It's one of the reasons we don't have a higher minimum wage in Pennsylvania, and a bunch of other more traditionally redder states do. And it's a reason why you're seeing this marijuana and abortion things go through too.
I'm really curious how this works in other states, because clearly something different is going on that means people in Arizona, Missouri, Nevada, our neighbors in Ohio, keep coming back to them. They actually get these referendums on their ballots. They can vote on issues that Pennsylvanians really don't even get to have a conversation about.
Yeah. I mean, looking at Ohio, it's even more Republican-led than we are, but progressive policies still get passed there thanks to these citizen-led movements. So in Ohio, you have options. Step 1, 1,000 people sign a petition, just 1,000. From there, you can add to an existing law, you can repeal one altogether, or do what they did last year with cannabis. They can add a new article or a piece of a new article to their state constitution.
Just 1,000 people can kick this process off?
Yes. Like,
That's
can you
incredible.
imagine of the millions of people in Pennsylvania? Like, it kind of boggles the mind to think about what we might propose if we were given the power to try.
Like, when I was in high school, people as a joke tried to start a religion around worshiping Bob Saget, the like beloved dad from Full House. And I'm just imagining like you could get 1,000 people in a state to try to put on the ballot that like Sagetism is recognized as a state religion. I'm surprised these states aren't seeing silly ballot measures all the time.
I mean, in fairness, I don't think we did like a close examination of maybe the ones that don't see the light of day. But anyway, we'll stick with the ones that have been passing lately, at least the ones that are getting a lot of press attention. Here's actually Mary Lee Williams. If you have listened to CityCast Pittsburgh for a while, you probably recognize her voice. She worked with us a bit while Mallory was away earlier this year. So Mary Lee was a reporter in Ohio before she moved to Pittsburgh. And I just thought her observation on all of this and how it worked there was just really, really important.
One of the things that I think is really interesting about these citizen-led constitutional amendments is that it really does kind of create a vibrancy, I think, in people wanting to be involved or get involved in how to secure things in their state that maybe they want or want to protect, or even maybe in some cases fight against.
And I just love that, like the whole concept of people caring more and feeling more involved. Like, I feel like we've talked a lot about that as Pennsylvanians, like in this election cycle, knowing that our vote matters so much, and to get that feeling all the time that your vote and your voice matters in your state. It's just, I think it's really critical to getting people involved in the process. As far as we could tell from our research, 24 states allow for citizen-led initiatives on their ballots.
Yeah, so it's not just Pennsylvania that can't have nice things or can't get nice things in this specific way, but it really does feel like there's this critical part of the democratic process that's closed off to Pennsylvanians and I guess other people in states that don't have citizen initiatives on their ballots. Like this feels so fundamentally democratic to me, and I can't believe that like only half of our states have access to this.
Yeah. I mean, as far as we can tell, too, like it's maybe always been this way. This is part of our Constitution and
our state constitution, right?
State constitution. And I checked around with, friends of ours that cover state politics, and no one we talked to is exactly sure why the state of Pennsylvania chose to do this or why we never chose to change it.
Yeah, if anyone wants to do that deep dive for us, please hit us up.
Yes.
But Megan, earlier you mentioned abortion access and legalizing cannabis, but I noticed there were also ballot measures this year in some states around the minimum wage and paid sick leave, which are also issues that I know people care and feel very strongly about. So voters in Alaska and Missouri both approved measures to raise the minimum wage and require employers to provide paid sick time. This is yet another nice thing we are not seeing on our ballots as other people in the country are able to vote for and receive them.
Yeah, I actually remember some reporting that our friend Ed Mahan at Spotlight PA did a few years ago. At the time, almost 30 states had raised the minimum wage above the federal minimum. And Ed reported then that most of them had gotten it done through ballot referendums. He also pointed out that 11 of those states, they had voted for Donald Trump the first time around. It feels like a similar dynamic to what we're seeing with some of these abortion referendums, where people vote for conservative candidates, but then also vote for initiatives that those candidates don't support.
I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I also think it should signal to politicians of all stripes that things like paid leave, a higher minimum wage, access to abortion care, these are popular issues. These should transcend parties. People want these things. But anyway, let me guess, Megan, Ohio is one of the states that raised their minimum wage through a ballot measure.
Ohio raised its minimum wage through a ballot measure. In 2006, actually, they passed a minimum wage increase, and it ultimately got tied to the consumer price index, which is, inflation. That's how we calculate that. So it automatically goes up. So at this point, it's at $10.45 for non-tipped workers. Actually, it's going to go up again in January, on January 1st. So it'll be $10.70 then, because as we know, inflation is up.
Yeah, I mean, when you say these numbers, like 1045, 1070, that still sounds very low.
It is.
But it's a lot better than where we are here in Pennsylvania because our minimum wage has been $7.25 an hour, the federal minimum since 2009. And it was the federal minimum before that, too. So the only reason it went up is because our federal government required it. Like we have not on our own taken the steps to increase the minimum wage.
A Liberty Seguros agora é Yellow. Tudo aquilo que já era bom continua igual. Excelência e proximidade permanecem como nossa essência. Porque não é uma mudança, é uma evolução. A Yellow está sempre em sintonia com você. É liberdade com segurança. A melhor experiência acessível a todos os clientes, iluminando cada passo da sua jornada. Deixe essa luz iluminar seu caminho. Yellow Seguradora. Seguro para viver livre. Consulte seu corretor.
Aqui no Spotify, muitas playlists são criadas através de inteligência artificial. A IA está em todo lugar, mas nem todo IA é igual. Desbloqueie experiências de IA mais inteligentes, fáceis de expandir e personalizadas para sua vida e seus negócios com os computadores Lenovo e processadores Intel Core Ultra, que transformam a sua experiência tecnológica. Acesse lenovo.com/smarteraí. Lenovo, inteligência artificial mais inteligente para todos.
So we've been talking about the minimum wage. There have been proposals from within the Pennsylvania legislature to change our minimum wage. Senate Democrats proposed something this year, actually, Senate Bill 1186, that would have jumped it up to $20 an hour. So from $7.25, that federal minimum, to $20, so we could ideally be more competitive against our neighboring states. But it never even made it out of committee.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, actually, WESA had a story over the summer where State Senator Devlin Robinson, a Republican who was just reelected this past week, basically says folks in Tioga County and our middle counties, don't need as much money as maybe people in Pittsburgh or Philly. So like maybe we just sit on this for now while we try to find consensus, which means in effect not doing anything at all. And I think an important note there, Robinson is the chair of the Senate committee where SB 1186 stalled out. So, I mean, I guess he's right on one point. Like if the measure does not have the votes, there's really no benefit to advancing it. I understand the politics of that. It's just, I hate that that's the game. Like if that's a thing that there's consensus for, and I think that there is, why can't it move?
I would also like to see how much Robinson makes an hour, just out of curiosity.
You know, I'm glad you asked that because I looked it up because this sort of thing frustrates me. There's a wonderful piece from WHYY that talks all about this. So in Pennsylvania, we have full-time lawmakers, and the base salary this year, 2024, for state senators like Robinson is $106,000 a year.
So more than $7.25 an hour, I'd wager. I can't do the math that fast, but that's
yeah,
my
I mean, it's
assumption.
not a 9 to 5, right? But like, even if we pretend that it is, it rounds out to something like $51 an hour. Plus, lawmakers get a per diem for food and lodging. So like $181 per day that they can spend on food while they're doing business at the Capitol. And they get mileage to and from the State House. They get mileage, Mallory, for going to their office and doing their normal job. They also passed this thing, this blows my mind, where they get automatic cost of living raises. So they don't have to appeal to their manager like the rest of us. They don't have to make their case. It just happens. They get a taxpayer-funded raise every single year automatically.
This is just frustrating because, you know, increasing the minimum wage, it's something that's popular. It would drastically improve so many people's lives. But we as everyday people don't have a route to make that happen, even as other states do and have.
Well, let's speak to that popularity we keep referencing. A progressive think tank this year, Data for Progress, polled a bunch of Democrats, Republicans, independents, all across some swing states. And they found that more than 80% of respondents all think the minimum wage isn't enough for a decent quality of life.
The current federal minimum wage, I'm assuming.
Yes. And they defined it at like that quality of life question as the ability to afford basics like groceries, rent, transportation without struggling. And I think that's the key point there. To bring it here to Pennsylvania specifically, Franklin and Marshall College had a poll not long ago. This was pre-pandemic in 2019, when almost 70% of respondents, all of them registered voters, supported increasing the state's minimum wage. Also in 2019, they found that 59% of the folks they polled, again, all registered voters, they wanted to legalize recreational cannabis. Like Pennsylvanians have been saying for a long time that they want some of these things. Actually, let's go back to Spotlight PA's Ed Mahan again, just sort of reiterating this point.
But you just see a lot of issues that, you know, don't come up for a vote ever, you know, and that's sort of the big issue is not even getting them to pass the legislature, but getting the legislature to vote on them.
And that's the other frustrating thing about all this is that it doesn't have to be a partisan thing. I think we keep drilling this point. Like Ohio is in every way GOP controlled, the House, the Senate, the governor's office, but they still manage to do this because the citizens can go around them. And that's the difference with Pennsylvania. We do not have that path. Mm-hmm. Our path to getting things on the ballot, like you said, Megan, is for legislators
to do it for us.
Right. So I do want to take a minute to talk about the kinds of things that do end up on our ballots that we do get to vote on based on the legislators deciding to put them up for a vote.
Yeah, so the most contentious one, probably in recent memory, was when lawmakers let us vote on whether they should be able to limit the governor's power around emergency declarations. So these often happen around weather events, but this was in response to COVID and the way the governor at the time, Tom Wolf, staggered the reopening of businesses immediately following the big shutdown in 2020. So lawmakers were mad. They moved really fast. They caught the end of one legislative cycle and the beginning of another, and we, the voters, passed it. Now the legislature can end an emergency declaration when they want to, like shorten it if a majority agrees to do that. Basically, they asked us, the voters, to give them more power in that emergency declaration process, and we said yes. Some other ballot measures that have passed recently include anti-discrimination protections for people based on race and ethnicity. Another gave fire departments with paid firefighters the ability to apply for loans the same way volunteer companies can. So, I mean, this happens. We can have referendums and ballot measures, but it's not us doing it. It requires planning and consensus and sometimes really targeted anger on the part of our legislators in a way that compels members of one party to cross the aisle and work with the other to get this stuff done. Because, like you said, Mallory, our state house and Senate have often been controlled by different parties.
Yeah, and they're going to remain that way. Like I said, election results have not been certified yet, but the races have been called. And so Republicans kept the state Senate and Democrats kept the state House. So still a split state legislature. Before we wrap up, as much as I would love to end on a positive note about how there's an active push to change things and make citizen initiatives a reality in Pennsylvania, sadly, that does not seem to be the case.
It sounds so hopeful when you say it like that, though. Yeah, we reached out to a few reporter friends, and no one, including Ed, has any memory of any serious effort to change this process in Pennsylvania. You know, Ed actually brought up something that I think I'd forgotten about, but very pertinent because it's actually how lawmakers got those automatic cost of living raises we were talking about.
Ooh.
So back in 2005, legislators passed a big pay raise for themselves and some other state offices in the middle of the night. So depending on the job, you got a 16 to 34% raise. People were rightly, I think, very mad about it. A bunch of the folks that voted for that lost their elections right afterward. Some of those raises were later repealed, but the cost of living piece, that stood. So over the last 20 years, those base salaries have grown to that $106,000 a year amount. But it was that wave of anger, I guess, in 2005. Like, that's the last time Ed says that he can think of that people even talk seriously about changing our rules around how some of this shakes out, including things like ballot referendums. But it never went anywhere because, like, again, the lawmakers themselves would have to change the state constitution to give us, the citizenry, some of their power. And there's really no incentive for them to do that.
Okay, so there's no way for us to have nice things or like as nice as Ohio does.
I mean, you can have nice things. The legislature just has to okay it before it gets to you. Ed says actually he remembers some folks talking about like we could hold a constitutional convention, like one of the things that we had that led to the American Revolution. But even then you would need buy-in from the state legislature. Honestly, I kind of love that option, though, like a constitutional convention. It's very nostalgic somehow.
Well, all I will say is if there was ever a ballot measure to allow for citizens to create ballot measures, I would vote yes.
Right to your legislator. Y'all don't go anywhere. In a second, we've got a segment sponsored by Alterations Express. Mallory is chatting with their marketing manager, Jen Rondinelli, about their services, from altering fancy gowns to hemming pants in just half an hour.
Hey, I'm Mallory Falk, executive producer for CityCast Pittsburgh, and I'm here with Jen Rondinelli, the marketing manager for Alterations Express. Welcome, Jen.
Hey, Mallory, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited to talk to you because I have a bunch of items hanging in my closet right now that I've been meaning to take to a tailor, and I just have not gotten my act together to find one. So tell me about Alterations Express. Like, how long have you been doing this for?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, like, it's something we hear a lot from customers. I've been meaning to come a lot. I just have put it off. So I'm glad that, you're sharing kind of a common story with our existing customers. But we're celebrating 30 years in business this year. We're really proud of it. We're happy to get back on track and celebrate kind of the success we've had over the past 30 years and then look forward to kind of the future. So we've been around for a while. We started in 1994 with a location in Youngstown, Ohio, and we've been lucky enough to mushroom out. We opened up our first Pittsburgh location in 2001 in the North Hills, and we're still there to this day. So our history in the city has been rich, and we've been lucky enough to be very successful in the city, and it's because of our awesome customers and our awesome employees. Now we have 4 locations across the city. We're feeling really grateful celebrating this awesome business milestone.
Yeah, so where are those 4 locations? And then when people come to you, what can they expect?
We have our Warrendale location and then North Hills. We have East Liberty that's kind of closer to the city, and then our Bridgeville location. So kind of North and South Hills, you should be able to find a location that is pretty convenient towards wherever you're located in the city. Those are our 4 Pittsburgh locations. We're known for fast, professional, and affordable alterations. Those are our business cornerstones, and we really adhere to those. Some kind of service aspects that make us different than your average tailor shop, we really put forward that professional foot forward when we're talking about our service. So we really prioritize putting customers at ease when they come in. Our fitting rooms are big, they're spacious. We prioritize privacy. We know that when you come in, you're looking for clothing alterations and tailoring, you kind of feel a little bit exposed. So it's our job to put you at ease, to walk you through the process beginning to end, and really at the end of the day, make sure that you're leaving feeling the most confident that you possibly can in your clothing.
So then tell me about the kinds of services you provide. What can people get done at your tailor shops?
Anything and everything done pretty much in terms of clothing alterations and tailoring. So stuff as simple as pant hems, clothing repairs, to stuff as complicated as wedding dress alterations can get, or formal dresses can get, or suit alterations can get. So we do full spectrum, men's and women's. Really, if you need anything done, we pretty much try to accommodate everything.
Gotcha. Well, personally, I've been cursed with short legs, and pants are always too long on me.
Same here.
So it definitely sounds like I could stop. Yeah, short solidarity. It definitely sounds like I could stop by with a pair of jeans. But then what about fancier clothes? You mentioned bridal gowns. I'm thinking of maybe a bridesmaid's dress, because at least in my experience, those things never fit very well. Talk about what you can do with some of those fancier items.
Yeah, absolutely. So for formal dresses, and this is something that kind of it makes us different than a lot of our other competitors. We don't require appointments for any of our customers to come in, so that you can walk in anytime that we're open and get any garment fitted. So if you're walking in with a bridesmaid's dress, we're going to be able to take care of you immediately. So, and then another thing that we kind of changed this year in terms of our service model is we opened up our bridal hub at Warrendale. So we took all of our wedding dress alteration specialists, our bridal gown seamstresses, we had them all transfer to our Warrendale location. And now we're handling all of our brides, all of our wedding dresses out of that singular location. So not only did that allow us to take care of more brides, because all of our bridal seamstresses are now in one space and they're working on only bridal gowns, but it elevates that service for our brides, gives them a little bit more personalized and special experience, and make sure that we're giving them the best workmanship that we possibly can.
That all sounds really great. I will be honest, I think one of the reasons that I haven't brought clothes in to get tailored is because it feels like, just a little bit of a hassle to drop stuff off and then have to come pick it up another time. Not a huge barrier, but it's real. But I understand that you have a solution to this problem.
We do. So our very famous service, it's certainly something that we've built our business around, is our pants hemmed while you wait service. So if you're looking to get in quick, get your pants hemmed, and wear it the same night, this service is perfect for you. So you come in, direct you to a fitting room, you put your pants on, we'll mark them, and then we can hem them in a half hour or less typically, and you can get on your way. So this service is definitely built for convenience, for people who are looking to kind of wear that garment the same day. And then also our turnaround time for any and every alteration project is just 4 days. So you come in on a Monday, you're going to get it on a Friday.
Wow, that's really fast. Jen Rondinelli, thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
And you can check out alterations-express.com to learn more. We'll include a link in our show notes so that you're just a click away. Thanks for listening.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. We will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Talk to you soon.
I wish I could do that. Just poll our team. Would you guys like to earn more money? Yes, done.